Can you hear me? Great. Welcome to the panel discussion on navigating a K school, Krishnamurti School in a world of crisis. My name is Deepa Pulipati. My son Surya is a senior here at Oak Grove School. We moved from the Bay Area about 6-7 years ago to send Surya to the school, and it's been absolutely transformational and one of the best things we've done for him. I'm also serving on the board of Oak Grove, and it's with great honor I'm going to introduce 3 of our panelists today. Joel Keeler, right in the middle, is our Director of Advancement, supervises admission and enroll management, marketing, communications, and fundraising at Oak Grove. As a parent of 2 Oak Grove students, Jojo and Charlotte, and husband to an OGS alumna, Jen, and now staff member, Joel has a unique perspective to communicate the story of Oak Grove to interested families and donors. With storytelling skills honed over 2 decades of working in the entertainment industry, he's now thrilled to spend his days working to advance the mission and intent of our school. Outside of work, Joel's passions are gardening, cooking, playing, and coaching soccer, as well as hitting the trails around Ojai with his family. Next, we have Will Hornblower. He's our Dean of Studies, oversees curriculum development, learning objectives, and student assessments, and maintains school-wide academic standards. With more than 20 years of teaching experience, including 12 years at Oak Grove, he has a passion for curricular design and program innovation, and he has led many Oak Grove initiatives, such as creation of the Oak Grove Graduate Profile and the development of the Parent Education Program. Will holds a Master's in Education from UC Santa Barbara, as well as a Bachelor of Arts in History and Latin American Studies from the University of Chicago. He's a parent of 2 Oak Grove students, Jack and Mabel. Will is a presence in all of our Oak Grove classrooms throughout the school day, assisting teachers with curricular initiatives and professional growth. And our final panelist is Dennis Rice. He has a Master's in Education. He served as a member of the Oak Grove School Board for the past 10 years, as chair of the OGS Development Committee, and has been a lifelong educator. He served as director of the Happy Valley School, where Krishnamurti sat on the founding board for over 2 decades, and then as head of academics for Laurel Springs School, and assistant head for academics at Villanova Prep. Dennis is wed to Meredy Benson Rice, past head of school and current teacher development coach, and together they enjoy camping, traveling with their golden retriever, Duke. Please give me a hand in welcoming our panelists. On the discussion that we have today.
Question. Can you guys all hear me okay? Navigating an uncertain world, navigating a world that seems in crisis is something that my first thought on it is it brings me back to an essay I read about 30 years ago. And the premise of the essay is that education is always in crisis. There's always something happening in the world where you feel like, how are our children going to get through the day? How are they going to get through the week? How are they going to get through the year? And yet, school as an institution endures. And we all know that children endure. And I think it's important to reflect on that because we sort of always seem at the precipice, right? We always seem at this point where the world seems to be crashing down, the headlines get grimmer and grimmer, yet places like this become an oasis where you spend time with children, you engage in thinking, you engage in inquiry, and that endures. And so my first thought on it all is, yes, we live in a incredibly challenging world right now. but also we as an institution are blessed to have strong roots and to be in a place where we're comfortable in this world.
Thank you. Joel?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I think the school was founded in a response to a world in crisis. Most of Krishnamurti's passages start with, in a world of conflict and violence and destruction that's coming from this inward conflict. So by our very founding, we're invited to create a space and an opportunity for adults and young people together to look at that inner conflict, to settle it here first, to allow space for a new style of education that doesn't result in that perhaps creates a different outcome. So presently navigating, it does feel, everything feels so amplified. Information is so available to us. There's, at a flick of a thumb, we can be in a different war zone with pictures and videos, and our nervous system feels as if we're there. And there's this collective response to that. And Will's word oasis, and it's actually in our mission and intent, oasis. That word, I think, is so poignant because it points to safety and a feeling that's created here. And I think that this school is an opportunity for young people and adults and the community to step into an area that's deliberately safe, psychologically, physically, so that we can allow for conditions that perhaps lead to a different outcome.
So what both of you are saying is that this school, in some sense, as much as we look at the reality, we are creating conditions for our children to engage in things that seem pretty hard and fearful, and giving them tools to sort of overcome it or meet the challenge.
I think also to add, yes, and also to add space. Kay spoke about leisure and the importance of creating an institution. And the first time I encountered that term, I was like, oh, so we just lay around here at school and just, and those of you who are familiar with the philosophy know that that's not the leisure that he's speaking to. It's the space within the day to engage with deeper questions and engage in a way that you don't feel that need for immediacy. You don't feel that need to sort of say, oh, all this is happening right now, I need a response right now. Mm-hmm. No, we can think about it. We can hold a question and consider it. And we try to do that within our classroom practice. And with an emphasis on the same idea of deep consideration, returning to consideration, a lack of emphasis on who won the argument or what is the right position, but instead staying with the question.
And also, I think this idea of busyness, what you're saying is that we are creating both psychological safety and space for our children to just sort of sit with some of these things in between academics.
And I think sorry to jump in, but I think that it's different across, because we're a preschool through 12th grade.
Right.
Some of this is not developmentally appropriate for a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old. For them, there's an opportunity to have space, to engage in play, to learn what it feels like to just be in the moment and safe and in nature and just allow that flowering to happen. As Will taught history for a long time in high school, and that's a perfect place to have conversations and allow for the observations and inquiry into conflict and those greater, but I could think across the school it can look quite different.
Yeah. Dennis, would you like to share, what are your thoughts on how we are preparing our students to manage and thrive in today's world?
Well, first of all, excuse me, I completely agree with Will, is that there's never really been a time in my life that the world has not been in one sort of crisis or another. Is this picking up all right? Excuse me. As Deepa said, that I am married to Meredy, and we are a couple of educational nerds. We will sit all evening long and talk about learning, and talk about children, and talk about Oak Grove, and talk about just sort of look at the way that people take things in, ourselves included. And one of her insights that I'll share with you is that it's not just the world that is in chaos, that the chaos is also inside of us, and that we're carrying all these things. We're carrying division, we're carrying anger, we're carrying greed and all of our selfishness and all the things that we have to look at ourselves and and catch ourselves doing. And even our children are the same way. Okay, it's my toy, it's your toy. And one of the things that Oak Grove School does beautifully is it helps students navigate that division and that chaos. It helps them find the right way of being able to say, what was it that helped them understand what was it that triggered that particular anger, that particular moment, and that we are all carrying a lot of the problems of the world, and that the school does a remarkable job in helping students resolve conflict in the most loving and open way, and not blaming anyone, and I'm constantly amazed at it. And one of the metaphors that she often used about the school is the school is like a bowl that holds these children. We hold these children that's sort of at the center of the bowl, and Jody's job particularly is to be able to hold that bowl, to be able to hold, you're talking about the parents and the alums and the friends of the school and the friends of the foundation, that we are all, in a sense, holding these children at the center of this, where they're able to grow and learn about themselves and learn to be able to resolve conflict in the way that they can in a safe way. That we create this bowl of safety that allows children to develop as themselves independently, to be able to discover their unique being in the world of who they are, but they can do it in a safe place. And I think that that's one of the magical things about the school, is that I think that most of the people that put their children in the school share a common set of values, that they as a parent, there's nothing more wonderful than to be able to go to a parent-teacher conference and realize that this teacher or this school gets my kid. They understand, when they're speaking to you, they're speaking about the same kid that you know, and that is priceless.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do love educational nerds in our school, Dennis. Just to kind of talk about specifically each of your roles, if you can share a little bit about, in your role, what are some of the things that you think we do as a school to address this constant concern that we are facing in today's world?
Well, I think one advantage to a small independent school, for one, is being able to be flexible in a way that often larger institutions are. There's so many stakeholders. There's so much. Just the sort of general inertia of the institution. It becomes difficult to be responsive to events. And one benefit of, in very much within the intent of the school, is always to stay small, is always to feel, to have an atmosphere on campus that is almost familial, in the sense that we are all collaborating, working together. The students are responding to us, but it's we are nimble as an institution when we respond to crises. And I think that's great. And I think from my perspective within academics, it means that not only, so for example, one thing that we've been discussing is it's an election year coming up, and it's going to be potentially a very divisive election year. And so how do you respond to that as an institution? And one benefit to being here would be just in that sense of touching base with all of the teachers, creating a shared set of resources around how to talk about issues like this, being able to know exactly, in my position, what is happening in the different classrooms. And also in that same sense of when things happen, and to return to this piece about, sort of space, when things happen, to be able to pause other the life of the school to respond. You know, I think of a few years ago, the big fire that happened in our valley, and that was a time when students, teachers were losing homes, where we had a long-term evacuation, and yet as a school, we felt in a place that we could support our students, that we could be responding to this world that seemed to literally be on fire in a way that felt encompassing and comforting for the families. And I would hope, you know, and I think sometimes especially with politics and with world events, it becomes more complicated to respond or to even wonder if we need to respond. But at the same time, I do appreciate that flexibility, and I appreciate this small, you know, sort of this smallness that we have here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Will's sentiment about size, and especially as a parent. And as Dennis mentioned, I feel that same sense of thanks that both of my daughters that are 13 and 12 years old are deeply known here by their teachers, the adults on campus. They know the campus itself, it feels like home to them. Speaking in terms of my role in both admissions and then in communications, I get asked a lot, what kind of person makes a good Oak Grove family? What kind of student are you looking for? And I think that's a really tricky question, because there's no model, there's no design, there's no template. We're in relationship, and we're looking for families that are also wanting to be in relationship with the school, with the philosophical founding, with our community. And I feel very fortunate in my role that a lot of people want to come to this school, and it is a small school. So that then becomes difficult to make sure that we can create a student body that is diverse, mm-hmm. that we're providing this kind of education to families that may not have the means. Because unfortunately, you know, we don't have a government structure that prioritizes this type of education, so we don't get public money. So we're forced to go an independent school model, which means that we need to collect tuition, and that just by that fact alone, it isolates a whole part of the population that I wish we could provide access to. Because I firmly believe that an Oak Grove education, this style of relationship-based education, works for any student. There's no student that wouldn't work for. I think that it can get tricky as you're talking about students that are unable to self-regulate and maybe affect the experience of others in the room. That, of course, would have to be a consideration. But even them, if you could get a small enough class size and have a teacher relationship with the safety around them, I honestly believe that any kid would thrive in this environment, whatever thriving looks like for them. As far as how we communicate about the school, I feel fortunate again, and I think that the way that we do it, where we just document what's happening here on campus. Our theme this year is the wholeness of responsibility, and we talk a lot about what our responsibility is. It's not up to us to fix the world out there, to fix the conflicts all over the world. Our work is here in front of us with the actions we're taking. And I think that by just showing the work that's being done here on campus with clarity and not with a dog and pony show, and we're not with slick marketing, we're just documenting, and that's what our early childhood program does. It's a play-based, child-led program, and teachers follow students around. It's emergent curriculum. They help foster and facilitate and leave centers for them to explore their interest. And then teachers document to reflect back to students, show to parents. And it feels like that's the approach that we take in communications that feels the most authentic, and I think communicates with both our parent body and the wider community in an authentic way that really can honor the work that's being done here. And yeah.
The two words that are I'm thinking about based on what you both said one was flexibility and being nimble, and the other was being in a relationship, right? And then how are we creating conditions for our students to constantly engage that muscle of being flexible when all of us have such varied thoughts and ideas and perspectives?
So I have a thought, and I want to return to something that we talked about before to clarify this sort of metaphor of oasis, because I think, you know, what I see as a vision for Oak Grove School is an oasis in the true sense of the word, where people come there to drink from, you know, to extend the metaphor, from the drink of the water of knowledge, right? To come to learn, but it's an open place. It's a place where strangers are crossing paths. It's a place where you might meet someone and gain a whole new perspective. It's not a walled garden where we try to keep the outside world away, or where we try to present our sort of that everything's all fine and dandy here, despite the fact that everything in the world may be a little crazy. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because it is, you know, we're in a very privileged position at this school, but we want our students to truly understand the world, but understand it from a place where they have the space and safety to discover themselves and discover where they can center themselves within the world. And I see that as one of the fundamental missions of the school. And to return to that piece of flexibility, what's important within the world of curricular design is that space to, when something happens, to address it and to make sure that we're talking about it in the classrooms, and to make sure that each teacher has a plan to address it in an age-appropriate way. It's to provide opportunities to both introduce new perspectives to the students and challenge some of the perspectives they may currently have. And it's also to make them aware of just how special it is to be in a place like this, and to be able to share in this educational experience. So how to create that awareness, I think, is the important piece of the flexibility part too.
I want to come back to that dressing of the piece, but Dennis, do you want to share your thoughts on your role on the board, on the development committee, and what are some of the things that you're doing in terms of navigating through this?
Well, development is a difficult process for Oak Grove. Is that we laugh about it. It's not so much what we do in the Oak Grove way as what we don't do in terms of traditional development practices. That we are here on this land by the graces of the KFA. That we have been provided beautiful land and buildings, and the friends of Krishnamurti and the foundation have been generous in being able to support us. But there's no way that tuition, you can charge the market of tuition, whatever the market will bear, but the tuition really cannot allow us to be able to afford to pay teachers what we really would like to be paying them, and we've done a much better job over recent years, even in the years that I've been here, a much better job. But still, it would be nice to be able to pay teachers and be able to create benefits that for all of the people that work at the school. And as a former head of school, I know that you budget for certain things, and then all these opportunities come up during the year that all these people that lined up at Jody's door saying, can we go to this workshop? Can we buy this? Can we do this? Because this is really important to the students. And the money that you get through the annual giving, et cetera, allows you to say yes to at least a few of those things, to be able to be able to do development, to be able to raise money. We don't name buildings after people. We don't have little plaques when people come into the school saying, here are the golden level donors and here are the silver level donors. We don't have little contests between the third grade parents giving more than the fourth grade parents. And we don't do any of those things. You go 100 miles south of us and you'll find that in almost all schools. That's the way that they do it. I think that Oak Grove, what we try to do is try to be able to have an inclusive community where people have a sense of belonging to this school community, students and parents and friends of the school, that there's a sense of belonging here, and I believe that all the giving that I know of really comes from the belonging. Is that I know that there's some major donors that don't live right nearby, and when I talk with them, I say, what you've done is just really generous, but you have no idea how many lives you just touched and how many students are really benefiting from what you're doing right now. And I want to be able to gather those students up and drop them on his porch or something, just to be able to say, look here, see what you're doing. But I believe that the way that we approach development is through relationship, with our relationship between, whether it be mine or Jody's or the people on the development committee, and try to be able to help people feel included in this particular project and what it is that we're doing in this small way, in this oasis known as Oak Grove. Otherwise, we really eschew a lot of the traditional things that you do in development offices, and sometimes it feels like I want to be able to go name a building after somebody just to be able to, but we don't do that.
I think that speaks to the core identity of our school. Coming back to conflict and fear that always comes up when we are addressing conflict. I'm curious as to what your thoughts on are at the school level, day to day. Where are some of the places that you see that we sort of either model or speak about the fear and in correlation with conflict?
I think oftentimes and again, to return to this model of early childhood as an example of a way in which we again, in the ways that we teach young children to see and understand the world, it's often through immediacy and through learning skills of conflict resolution or awareness of conflict or awareness of the role that of being an upstander or a bystander, or awareness of how does one assert a path of justice in the world. It's with those youngest children that I see this school having an effect that's very immediate, and whether it's through storytelling, through modeling, through play, or through scenarios. That's one way I think truly in understanding the world and getting kids on a footing where they're starting to be equipped to because ultimately, when we think about where we want students to be, we want them to be equipped to go out into this world. And how does one stay sane in an insane world? It's like you need scaffolding, you need an education that provides you with that. I would look to our early education program first, and I could speak to a number of things they do. But then, as we move up through the years, it is that sort of, again, that tenderness in approaching the students with always a sense of understanding, a sense of hearing them, a sense of allowing them to have the freedom to choose how their identity, to choose how they present to the world, and then to equip them with the rhetorical tools, with the ability to have a civil discourse with someone that they don't agree with. all of these pieces to which, when you see our graduates and when you see them ready to engage and to go out onto, for example, a college campus where, as we know, right, college campuses right now are full of dissent and full of students expressing their minds, and how do we equip our students to feel both secure in who they are, but also to feel secure and to engage in the world however they want to engage in the world. And it's central to our program. Probably I would say even more so than teaching them, math or science or whichever. It's like, let's teach them how to be human beings.
And I think there are three responses generally as you're speaking that come to mind. One is the physiological response, where we do a lot of meditation and all of those things in our school. One is the emotional response, and one is the intellectual response. I feel like as a school in all areas, we are sort of addressing or just figuring out ways to help our students respond in those three ways while they're being authentic to themselves.
Mm-hmm. And then within that fragmentation that you're talking about, to bring it all back together again, to understand and see your emotional response and your intellectual response and your physical response, and to pull it back into saying, I can see this, right? I can see that when the student says something to me, I am angry, yet I can move beyond that and we can have a constructive dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, I think fear is a really ripe topic for investigation in a school. And I see it in admissions a lot, especially as I'm touring families who are meeting our school for the first time. There are families that come to our school because they know of the philosophical founding, they know of Krishnamurti's teachings, and sometimes they're surprised that there's even a school in the United States. There's other families that just know us because word of mouth, they've heard that there's this great school called Oak Grove, and then they'll come here. And we'll take a long walk. Usually the first point of contact is we'll take an hour-long walk around the school and have a conversation. And when we go through the high school, there are families, the first thing they want to think about is, where are the kids going to college? What kind of jobs are they getting? There's a fear. They want to know, are they going to get a job that's going to be able to have enough money so they can have a comfortable life, and it's like that. There's others for whom that is not important at all. And it's an interesting thing when you're making a decision based on that fear. It's future, it's past. It's rarely here in this moment now. So I know of a lot of the high school kids who take advantage of our counseling services and the pastoral care program and take those opportunities. And a lot of the guidance they're getting is simply around, let's check in for what's happening for you right now. Let's speak with specificity around what you're thinking and your motivation, because I think that there are two types of energy that can motivate you. You can have that fear-based sort of pressing energy, and then there's also this joyousness energy. There's an energy that comes from passion and purpose and this other feeling. And allowing space for students to look inside for how those two might feel, have a point of reference. And that is as important for us as staff members and faculty members to be doing that work ourselves. One, so that we can show up and be in relationship from a place that isn't peppered with our own fear, or have a lens so we're not able to see what's in front of us, to eliminate that reactivity. But if we're allowing spaces for young humans to get to know what it feels like, have a point of reference, to then be able to make choices and they maybe work backwards. Oh, I'm really emotional this morning. I'm feeling anxious. Well, okay, how was last night? I stayed up really late till 2 a.m. because I had to get this assignment. Okay, then let's work backwards. How can we get into a situation where we're not like that? I am really thankful for the opportunities for young people and myself, and the offerings that are here for both a parent and a staff member to be able to meditate in community with other parents here, to go do a pastoral care exercise with another adult facilitator who I might be meeting for the first time in our beautiful areas. I think it's a really important question, this idea of fear and its place in education, and I think that it's prevalent, it's everywhere, and I'm thankful for these spaces.
I think the simple tool or the simple aspect of just naming what we are feeling, I think is very critical and very important for us to even have or at least it's foundational to having a good conversation, especially when we are either triggered or our senses are heightened or we're angry. We're not able to like really speak from our heart. So I think just the idea of just naming it, I am feeling this way, so I need to take a moment, I feel is super powerful. I feel it's a superpower.
And interestingly, I think for adults to model that behavior in front of young people, how profound that is for them. You know, you and I had a conversation last week, and I think we were talking about adults saying, I don't know, in front of young people, and how big, but for an adult to say to a young person, because they're often looking at you, saying, they're looking at the adult saying, tell me what's right and wrong. If an adult says, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, or I need to take a deep breath, or modeling that, how profound that is. And I definitely see that here at the school.
Dennis?
I'm liking listening to these guys. No, it's important. I mean, as a board member of the school, I have to constantly remind myself why I'm giving up my time, my energy to this. And the simplest way to do it is just to walk through the school, just to stop by at lunchtime or when the classes are going on, and they're just, it's all happening around you. You can just quietly walk through the school and you can see it. And it's so rich and so rare that I'd really encourage all of you, if you get the opportunity, to be able to just come by when the school is in session, when the kids are out there working in their circles underneath the trees. I think that it's just, it absolutely inspires me to be able to do the work that I do, because I know, okay, so we're all parents. I mean, three of our children went through the school, both of your parents, both of yours and yours and yours. So as a parent, what impact has Oak Grove School, do you think, had on your son?
Wow, a question back at me. I didn't expect that. I can speak for a very long time on it, but I'll keep it deep and brief. When we came here, my son was in 6th grade, and 6 months of being in the school, he jumps in the car and I says, hey, how was your day? And he's like, I had a great day, and guess what? I'm not stressed. I said, what do you mean you're not stressed? He said, I have this feeling that I'm not stressed. I said, tell me more, what does it mean? He said, in independent school, the previous school that he was at in the Bay Area, he said, I think I was stressed. Not having that now made me realize that I was stressed in that moment. I said, what is the difference in this school than independent? He goes, there's an ease of learning here. There's an ease of learning, and then there's a safety where I can just be more myself. I was like, wow, this is one of the best things we did for him. And over the years, I have seen, now he's a senior, I have seen the internal growth of who he's becoming as a young man, and it's just deeply profound. Deeply profound. And it's the environment in the school, it's all the teachers and staff, it's his friends, it's the community. I feel, to everybody's point, that we are constantly in a relationship with each other, and we are talking, we are being real, we are being vulnerable, we are being scared, and we are saying all of these emotions are valid, and we are creating a space for them to talk about it.
And one other piece I think that's important to understand, and this is one of, when you think about, for some of the people in this audience may have visited Krishnamurti schools in India or have been to Brockwood School in England. One thing that I think thrives on our campus, and what I see is as a somewhat different model of Krishnamurti education, is to hear Deepa speak as a parent, but also to know that at our school, parents are very much invited and encouraged to be a part of the educational experience. And it's actually really fun, the job I get to do, because I often think about a sort of collective response to something that's happening. So some, again, some of these things aren't crises, right? AI is not a crisis. AI is a revolution, right? It's a new thing that is emerging. But you may get this question like, how is the school responding to artificial intelligence? And what is wonderful about this institution is we can bring everybody together to talk about it. So we'll start with the students and use our inquiry time. So we have, an hour on Mondays each week that we devote to discussing big ideas, and just ask them questions around, this is with our older students, our high school students, ask them big questions around what do they think the future is going to look like with generative AI as sort of this new paradigm in the way that they conduct their work. Then we bring the faculty together and have the exact same conversation, the same guiding questions, the same readings. Then we bring the parents together and have the same conversation. And you see all these sort of the same themes, the fear, the same student who says, I don't know what I'm going to do for work in 20 years. Is AI going to take my life over? And the parent who has the same fear about their own career. And to engage collectively as an institution around this question. And then also hear these responses. In this discussion around artificial intelligence, one of my favorite responses that I heard first from a student and then from a parent and then from a teacher, and everybody generated this themselves. There was no artificial generation of this response, but it was like, wow, this could be so wonderful in giving more space for the deep thinking that happens here on campus. Maybe here is a tool that if some parts of the rote parts of life are more automated, we do have more time to look inward and to ourselves and into self-discovery. And I felt like, I was like, wow, I got to be a part of all of these conversations and see everybody coming to the same realizations in conclusions, and realizing that we as a community dialogue around this. We also do this in other ways, like for example, our weekly we do weekly Krishnamurti dialogues on campus, and those are open to everybody, to parents, to students, to teachers, and to trustees, of course, as well. And just seeing the community interact and engage, and interact and engage on a very equal level, with our students being active parts and participants in this process of looking at what does it mean to be a human being in the world right now. It's cool. It's really cool.
I don't think we really shy away from having any conversation. I feel like when looking at our founder's intent, when he speaks about fear or conditioning or conflict, and deeply being self-aware of where we are, how we're coming across, what our thinking and feeling are, I don't think in the 7 years that my son has been here, we've never shied away from a conversation. And that's something that we've consistently, I think, built, and that's really credit to what happens at the school, because what he's learning there, he's bringing home. And even the most difficult conversations, I don't think we really shy away from it.
So when both of you were speaking, I heard you both sort of allude a little bit to parental fear. And I mean, as a parent, that sort of pushes my buttons, because you sort of, sometimes you lay you lie awake at night for fear of what your children's lives will be, and am I doing the right thing? Whether you're rewarding or punishing, whether you're this and that. I mean, you're always thinking, am I doing the right thing as a parent? Am I doing the right thing? And are they going to be okay? And I know that you probably get that in admissions as well. The fear of, will they go to college? Will they get a job? Will they be healthy emotionally, psychologically, intellectually?
Absolutely. and oftentimes it does start with a physical safety. There are a lot of families that move to our community to try to attend the school, or will come visit and say, we'll move here if we can get our kids in. And they're moving from places where they don't feel physically safe for their children. And I think that that's a different type of fear, because we are a really safe community. And whether you're attending Oak Grove or one of the other schools, I think that Ojai is just a safe place for young people to be kids longer. You can be a kid a little bit longer in Ojai. I feel comfortable with my two daughters walking. They don't have cell phones. We let them walk around downtown, take the trolley, take their little wallets with a few bucks and go to get frozen yogurt. And it feels comfortable because I know there are people around them that they can go to, ask a question to. We're in community in a place that has that physical safety. But yeah, the psychological safety question, I think, is a really important one to look at and be aware of for each of us, because there are pressing issues that make us feel, the environmental crisis for one. We have questions. If you're raising a child now, they're born with this idea that they're born into a world that's on fire. And they hear that from the minute they start to understand language. They inherit that fear. So a lot of them feel empowered to then, a lot of our graduates head off and work with a mission to try to work for climate change, because it speaks deeply to them. They see a problem in the world and they want to use their energy to go be a benefit to the world. And I see that consistently with the choices that the young people make with where they put their professional efforts after Oak Grove.
May I ask a question of the two of you?
Sure.
So I'm curious, at a school, in part of our ethos as a school is that we try to avoid comparison and we try to avoid competition. Yet, Joel, you're in the business of trying to attract people to our school to make everybody know that it's the best school in the Valley and beyond. Dennis, you're in the business of, or you help to work to guide donors to contribute to our school and to convince them that it's a more worthy cause to contribute to our school than maybe to other causes they might be considering. So how do you reconcile that? How do you both live within the ethos of our school, but do the things you're trying to do?
Meredy and I have a joke that we want to have an Oak Grove bumper sticker that says, Oak Grove School, the best non-competitive school in the Valley. We come back to that.
I think it's interesting because I honestly don't feel like we are in competition with the other schools in the Valley. We are a school in the Valley.
That's so.
What's that?
Well, that's so. That each of the schools tends to be able to serve a particular type of kid, and some kids will not thrive at Oak Grove School, but they might thrive at Villanova School.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
And that's just natural.
And Jody and I talk about this a lot. For our mission and intent to be breathed into reality, this school needs to be filled with students and parents in a community that all wants the same thing, that wants this style of education, that believes that there is an alternative way to hold young people, allow conditions for them to flower into goodness, as the founder says, into their individual goodness. And that, I don't think that comes from trying to do a dog and pony show or have slick advertising and have people come in and pack the roster full of people, because we could probably fill the school by doing that at every grade level and have, a budget surplus, but it wouldn't be working towards the mission of our school. And it wouldn't provide the conditions for us to have the community that we need of people, because it can't be transactional. For this type of education to work, it can't be a car pulls up, kid comes out, hands a check, I'll pick you up at the end of the day. Like I realized that very quickly in preschool when my youngest, Charlotte, started preschool. I worked from home, so I was so excited. Okay, I get to drop her off. That's one less I can get to work now. But it became clear that I needed to be a part of this community. I needed to be there, to be having the conversations, to come to the meetings, to be living out my part of the deal. And I think for us, it's imperative that we enroll families that have that same sense of buy-in. And that doesn't come from us saying, you know, having a sign twirler on the street, going, Oak Grove over here, this is the place. I think it's by exhibiting the excellent work that's being done here on campus, honestly, where like our messaging matches the experience. If we're simply, and it's a very difficult thing, and we talk about this in our outreach team all the time. Oak Grove is a hard thing to represent because everything we put out there, every ad we put out, anytime we do something, it's a representation of a very real, authentic, felt sense that you can't put on a, you know, photograph is a snapshot in time. It doesn't capture what it feels like to walk on this campus. It doesn't capture that moment when you see a teacher see a student for who they are and allow them to feel their struggles safely. It doesn't, you can't sum that up. So, yeah, our work is simply to try to communicate, both with our families and with the outside community, what's happening here as authentically as possible and without as much embellishment, I think. Like when the seniors came back from India, one of our outreach members went to help chaperone that trip, and he let me know that the Rishi Valley School, they don't photograph anyone. And I was so blown away by that, but I was like, of course they don't. But then there's this other functional part of, we do need to function, and we do need the community to know that we're here in a way. So it's something we're looking at all the time, and it's a balance. It is a balance. But honestly, I don't believe we are in competition with other schools. I have to catch myself when a student elects maybe to move from 8th grade to 9th grade at a different school. Part of me starts to think, well, what does that school have that we don't have? And it's just that's their experience. They're moving on, you know, and we don't need to become this other choice for them. We need to stay authentic to who we are. And the people that want to be here will be here with us, I think.
Well, I have to tell you, Joel, as a parent, I shamelessly speak about our school because it's so amazing.
You actually do a wonderful job.
I do want to
Yeah.
and I acknowledge my part in that.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. I think part of what I'm seeing, and because I'm even more deeply involved in so many ways at the school, just not only as a parent, I see this constant balance that we try to create between living in a world where having kids in our school is important, running a school is important, but also speaking about it without being competitive, without all of these other things that we have, and just speaking organically about it, I think is a challenge. But I feel like you and our outreach team and Jody and staff are addressing it very beautifully, if I say so, as
Thank
a
you.
parent.
It's a process for sure, all the time.
So I'd like to open up for to questions to the audience, and then I have some really interesting questions that I'd ask from our people online. Yeah, there's a.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello.
During the conversation, I had some questions, and I'm going to read them to make my mind. I'm not very fluent in English, so I'm going to read them. To make a community at large without boundaries, it could be one of your goals. To have a link between educational initiatives that have taken Krishnamurti principles, but are not Krishnamurti schools, no? Because we know that India has some schools, and UK, and here. But there are a lot of initiatives that have taken Krishnamurti principles. So could that be another goal, to make a link between and have a relationship? And the other one is to respond to other children in the world to have the same opportunities. I know Rishi Valley's project. I've been in Rishi Valley, and I met these 40 little schools and the River Project, no? So they can access poor children to this safe environment, no? And to this opportunity to learn without authority or without authority and with freedom and security. So here, we have a boundary now between all America, but we have a lot of boundaries now between, ¿cómo se llaman? Países. Countries, thank you. But as Krishnamurti has told us a lot, we shouldn't have boundaries. So how to make this relationship with Oak Grove? Because it's the only school in America. It's the only one. So maybe, we can share things. We can share things with other teachers that are committed in Latin America. I don't know if in Canada, or even in the US, no? There must be some other schools that, I don't know. It's some questions that I pose here.
This is a question that comes up, that has come up regularly, and that is that people think this is a Krishnamurti school. So somehow people are going to come in and we're going to indoctrinate everybody about all the Krishnamurti teachings, and where's the class in Krishnamurti and all of that, which we do not have. The ethos that Krishnamurti teaches is woven into the fabric of the school, and in the way that we interact with each other, and the way that we interact with ourselves, and the things that we read and the things that we do. But you could go through the whole 12 years, hardly, nobody's going to talk to you about, lecture you about Krishnamurti, or you don't have to read his writings. But the thing is that we are such a different school than the Indian schools because we're in a different culture. And that we can take the lessons that we learn from K and we be able to apply them to this culture at this time, to these students and these parents. And I think that they're equally transferable for this culture, but it's a different school. The school is going to appear different. But at the same time, we're very much a Krishnamurti school.
Your question, though, about boundaries and how can we be a benefit to our community beyond the campus itself, it's one that we're always asking ourselves. It comes up a lot, and Rishi Valley has very specific projects that they're able to work on, and we have that same question, and we would love to be able to engage with our community more holistically and welcome the broader community onto the campus more and be a benefit to the neighborhood we're in. The reality is, most of the families living in walking distance to our school, this is not a possibility for them to attend our school because of the economics of having to run an independent school. So one, we're committed to trying to provide access to just our neighborhood and the community we're in. But it's a wonderful question, and it's not one that I think we have a definitive answer to. But we're constantly looking at ways we can bring the community onto campus and create lasting impact beyond just the students that are able to attend and go off into the world. But we have this space. We have this beautiful campus, this large piece of land. The KFA has this giant piece of land that is even itself sort of this natural oasis in these neighborhoods. You drive around and you look at a satellite map and there's this beautiful piece of land that wildlife thrives on. It's a fantastic question, and it's one that's actively being discussed. And I don't think we have a specific, here's an initiative that we're working on, but I think that now that, it's tenuous to run a school, and I think that we're approaching our 50th anniversary, and the foundation is feeling more solid from what I understand. I mean, it's more mature, as we're more mature as a school. And I hope that in the next 50 years, a focus can be on what benefit can we now provide to our community, and how can we engage the community at large.
And one last piece too in this, I think your third question was around the sort of how can we as a school contribute to the larger community of the ideas of K, and sharing it with people in South America or Canada. And it's another initiative we've actually taken as a school, is to be more active within the Krishnamurti community. So this year I had the privilege of getting to go to the Krishnamurti Teachers Conference in India, in Chennai. And it was such a wonderful experience to be in this sort of shared community of teachers from all of the schools in India gathered in Chennai at the KFI there, and it, all of this distance sort of collapsed because we were all teachers, and we were all talking about these same, just problem solving around raising children, and how should we talk to them about this and that, and sharing projects. And I know in the same way our board members and some of our leadership have gone to the conference in Switzerland. There's each summer to do the same sharing of understanding that we, despite the distances and despite the different models of education, there is a commonality that we need to hold. And also the journal of the Krishnamurti schools, we always have faculty and staff members and administrators participate in writing for the journal, and it's a wonderful kind of document, and I appreciate that those in India who coordinate it, but I also appreciate that our school contributes as well.
Thank you.
The question is here.
Thank you. I'd like to. Do we have another question from the audience? Sorry, I thought he's the one fixing.
You already talked about last 50 years, and you've gone more solid, and you're thinking about 50 more years. But who produces the teachers? Do you have a program for producing people like you? And who funds them? And how about your growth? You have to, go through trainings and acquiring all the knowledge and all that. Do you have a program for that?
Well, I'm hoping, that Dennis will raise the money for a program exactly like you're describing, because I think it's a hiring, training, retaining teachers, retaining the right kind of teacher, finding the right kind of teacher. This is a challenge that we as a school certainly are looking at. If you consider when this school was founded 50 years ago, the model was like, and I see some people in this room who lived this model, but it was like, you'll live on campus, and your classroom will be like your living room, and we'll just be a small little community. And now when we engage in hiring, we are talking about credentials and levels of education and cost of living and salaries and all of these pieces where, some people will find our school. This is the best place in the world. They want to teach there so badly. And then they take a moment to look up at Zillow or whatever real estate listings they go on, and it just can't work. And so it's very much both the practicalities of training, attracting, and keeping teachers, and also the philosophic, what kind of teachers do we want? Very much top of mind. And I think it's a really interesting suggestion in the sense of, could we create a program where we are training teachers, where we're doing that work on campus, and we're having young folks come in and learn at a school like ours. it's something we've thought about, we think about, would be amazing. It's not happening right now. But.
We literally just had this conversation before walking into the panel was,
Yeah.
is there room for a student-teacher program, or is there the ability to help train teachers and be a place of learning, and which is also then an offering, for the community and something to give back. But I think that may be the great challenge. It's a very dynamic thing, a school and a community of people coming together, and it will never be static, and I imagine that will be one of the great challenges.
I think also we should fund for creating housing for these students. You hit the right button.
Another thing that we always talk about as well, it does always come back to we should raise money for that. And I'm not looking at you, Dennis, just to make it happen.
I can go
All
out.
the answers lie with Dennis at this point.
I've spoken to people saying, look, you can give $1 million to Stanford University and you might get a nice thank you note. You can give $1 million to Oak Grove School and change the course of the organization. And the fact is that you can have an impact, a greater impact by we're at the point that one of the things, by the way, that is really encouraging to me is that you're talking about creating teachers. There's a number of people who are now teaching on staff, including one that's in the front row here, that basically that went through Oak Grove School, and now they're coming back as teachers. And there's a number of, and also, or coming back as parents, where they're moving back to town just to put their kids in the school. And we're beginning to see that flourish of community where you've got second generation parents and second generation teachers that are coming back into the school, which is very, very encouraging for me. But we do, we have some tremendous resources in terms of developing teachers, and it is really nice to be able to grow teachers, to be able to, I always, as a head of school, I believed in hiring character. There's a couple of people that I just hired, not because they were credentialed teachers, but because they were people that I wanted my kids to be in contact with every day. I knew who they were, and they were, intelligent, creative, moral people that I just wanted them to be able to interact. And I said, I can help you become a good teacher. I can send you to graduate school. I can give you all the support in the world, but it's a lot easier to teach somebody to be a good teacher than it is to teach them to be a good person. And to be able to, and what I wanted, and I look around at the staff here, and it's just magical. It's just really good what we have here. But these are people that you want your children to be in contact with on a daily basis. And from that, you can support teachers, and that's what Will is doing. Will is really in the job of supporting teachers in curriculum. And we can always support what they're doing in the classroom. What else do you need, and what can we do? But it's a lot easier to do that than to be able to try to be able to morally develop people to be able to be good at interacting with kids. So I do believe that we're actually doing a reasonable job at it, but we could certainly do better.
Thank you. I have a very interesting question here, and this is to all the three of you. If civility is always required during training, how do people expect to compete when your opponents bring non-civility to bear?
Could you go through that question again?
If civility is always required during training, how do people expect to compete when your opponents bring non-civility to bear?
This is an interesting question because I think it often speaks to this idea. One of the things that we have this document called the graduate profile, which looks at what do we see as some competencies, some skills and qualities that we want Oak Grove graduates to have. Mm-hmm. And the fear that parents, that students have, that sometimes even teachers have, is that our kids won't be ready for this world when they leave Oak Grove, right? That they're going to walk into a college campus with 60,000 kids and a class full of 200 students, and they won't know how to function. Or they're so used to leaving their laptop, just kind of out on the grass out here and casually walking around, that when they go and, are in a city and in a busy place, that they won't know how to live in this world. But I think the real education that they get. It's being able to see in themselves and have the strength of knowing what kind of person they are when they encounter adversity, whatever it looks like, whether it looks like incivility or it looks like violence or it looks like a very different environment than they're accustomed to, that they have the tools to be able to function and actually to thrive. And there's always this, I spotted our college counselor in the room, and it makes me think about this, always these questions that come up about like, they're not going to be ready because they've only been in this little small space, and it's like, no, we give them the tools to thrive. Yeah. And I would hope the resilience to thrive as well, because yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and there's a lot of awful things that our students will encounter, but we get them ready. They're prepared.
And I can actually sort of attest to that because one of the questions that I commonly get when I go back to the Bay Area with all my friends is that Surya is in a school of like 247, 250 students, and he's heading to a college now. And how is he going to be able to cope with that huge environment? And the one thing that I say to them is, if you just kind of speak to him, you'll know that he'll be absolutely fine. And if you just hear him, if you just see how he engages with people, with the world, and it's almost like a quiet confidence that he has, and very self-assured in who he is, even though he's only just 17. But I feel like, and that has come with him being in the school and being in this environment.
Will, you should know, way back, like '85 or something, I was in a graduate program at Harvard, and I heard a professor speak about, they did a study of who made it to their second year at Harvard. Okay, they admit the best of the best, and then who drops out after freshman year and goes on. So they basically did a whole study of sophomores, and they looked at all the different variables, and they came out with two really strong variables of all the different things they could look at of who was going to survive at Harvard. One was time management skills, and the other was having had a previous mentor relationship with an adult in their education before they were at Harvard. Because these are the people that will go into, there's nothing lonelier than office hours at a university, because you're sitting there at your desk and you're waiting for students to come in and talk to you, and they don't. And Oak Grove students have no problem at all going in and talking to the adults. They'll come in and they'll sit down and talk to them. But that always stayed with me, but because it wasn't even close. He said they stood out among everything else, is whether or not you had a mentor relationship, if you had teachers that you could talk to.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know that I would categorize this as being a place where civility is required. I think that a lot of things are coming up for students here. A lot of things are coming up for staff. And how are we then in relationship when those things come up? So we do talk, and it felt like a sports question almost to me with training, and I see that with our sports. We call ourselves a non-competitive school. That doesn't mean the kids don't want to win as a team. You talk to these kids and they're excited all week about a basketball game. And I see them out there outside of practice time working together because they love the joy of the game and they love coming together as a team. That doesn't mean if they win the game, they're in the opponent's face saying, we play teams like that. They face non-civility in those moments. And sometimes that's an opportunity for us to talk about that. To talk about, did you witness that? Did you witness the response that came up when you're going to shake hands and that kid yelled in your face? Real life's happening. It's happening for them. And it's just, how are we looking at it? What sort of frame are they being held in to bear witness to it, I think.
Yeah.
And not to mention the piece too around that I'll give you guys an anecdote. I was on the second grade playground on Friday, and a student looks at me and she goes, "You're boring." And that stung, right? That's I was like having a little midlife crisis in that moment. So one teacher response, right, of course, is to say, like, you can't talk to me that way. I'm a teacher. You can't, that was an insult, and we're going to go to the office together, and I'm going to call your parents, and they're going to teach you how to not talk to teachers that way. And I thought about that for a second. But I also know that this is a great time to have a conversation. I said, why? What makes me boring? What do I do that's boring? And we were talking about how I didn't want to get on the swing set and how I didn't think that spinning around in circles was really fun. And then I told her a little bit about what I like to do that I think's fun, and we had a great conversation. And it was that ability, right, to see each other as both she sees me as a person that she can share her feelings with, and I see her as a person that I want to actually get to a point beyond this sort of adult child, I'm the authority, you are not, you don't know anything. And maybe she's right. Maybe I am a little boring. That's okay. We can talk about that. But I just think that civility's not the goal. Dialogue is the goal. Yeah. And understanding's the goal.
Yeah. And in that moment, one of the quotes that came to my mind was, she's speaking her truth without blame or judgment. How she's feeling in the moment, and we are addressing it in the moment. Thank you, Will, for sharing that really lovely example. Another question, if you don't have from audience here, is, what if understanding the world cannot be done in a psychologically safe manner?
I'm wondering if there is a possibility of understanding the world is a big concept. And I think that without some form of psychological safety, I'm wondering if there is then distortion in seeing, in relationship to the world, in piecing things together. I don't know, but to my mind, psychological safety it needs to be there. Without that sense that I belong, that there's a freedom to make mistakes, and openness, and they will be cared. I think that's one of the things I love. This is a safe place for young people to try things out, to, like that second grader, there's an opportunity to put things out in the world, have them received, with care in some sense, and then have it reflected back and be in a relationship. So I don't know what it then looks like. And the sad truth is that not everyone has psychological safety. And I don't know that I have an answer to it, but for me personally, I think that it is, it's essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, understanding the world is really kind of curious because it's a tough world that we live in, and part of understanding is also knowing that it is tough, and some parts of it are really hard, and some parts of it we have no choice but to deal with it. But I think if just by circling back to one of the things we talked about, just naming it that it's hard, and creating a safe space to speak about these things, I think would be the most critical thing, or at least I can speak to myself and say I can do that as a parent.
And I think it's also important to not delineate that there's this hard world out there that I'm separate from.
Yeah.
Because and that is part of our theme this year. That's, I know, very rich in Kay's teachings, is this, we are part of this hard world. And it is not separate from us.
Yes.
Hello,
I'm
Jaime.
actually part of the staff here at the school. Oh. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I really liked something that Joe said about challenging the conventional markers of success. And so I wanted to ask you, perhaps, Will, psychologically, what are the markers of success for a graduate here on campus?
Mm-hmm.
I think the, I think when we use the word success, it's hard, it's sort of defining some sort of end goal, right? And to imagine that, and I think maybe I misspoke earlier in saying that when students leave here, they are ready for the world, right? Like, and that's probably not quite the way we should look at it, right? We're all, every phase of life, we're always trying to feel ready and prepared for a world that can challenge us in various ways. So I think of it more, and if we're to talk about success, it's sort of, what do they have in their backpack? What tools have they accumulated throughout an education at Oak Grove to be prepared and to be able to react and understand the world as they're moving through it, through different phases in life. And it's one of the things I always appreciate having taught for long enough is to meet students who are in various stages of their life. You know, some may have just graduated, some might just be starting a family, some might have just undergone a career change. And to reflect then with them on how did their education prepare them for these momentous changes in life in throughout their life. And what I would hope is that a school like this sort of strengthens that capacity for self-reflection and for deep engagement with who you are and how you encounter this. When you become a parent for the first time and you think about, like, what does this mean? How do I reconcile this new identity with these other pieces of myself? That somehow you would go back to an education of where you were asked to think deeply about yourself from, age 4 to age 18, and you had a pretty good idea of what sort of person you were when you left the school, that you would continue through that path of self-reflection and be able to sort of start to articulate a vision for yourself and an understanding. But it's an interesting question, Jaime, and I think that I wouldn't say there's a singular marker for success, but I would think that there's a sort of toolbox that can make a person more successful in navigating life's challenges and in navigating a world which seems to think up new and inventive ways to be in crisis. Sort of go back to the topic of the lecture here.
If I can just kind of piggyback on that, I'm going to try and say this without crying, and you guys will all have to bear with me. I'm a senior parent. I think when I kind of think about Surya and Surya heading out into the world, I feel like it's just such a success story because he's so happy and he's had some of the best years of his middle school and high school in the school. And he's grown and he's thriving. And I don't know what the future looks like, but I know in the moment that he's a happy kid. Even in a world that is in so much crisis. And very much comes from here. We have one final question. We have just a few minutes. Somebody at the back had...
Sorry, I don't think there's time left.
Can't hear you. Do you want to come up to the mic?
Sorry. I know there's no time, but some things I think came out. What is talent? Athleticism, working out. Please help me, you guys inquire into this and put them into a question. And cultural conditioning of students and the teachers. And attention to the small details, like small experiences at the school. And what are highly effective habits of teachers and students? Sorry for shaking.
Well, can you pause and Maybe we can answer one of those questions. I feel like those are quite a few.
Okay.
I think that in terms of the last question, it has to do with the relationship. Is that we are in a profound relationship with each other as parents, as students, as teachers, and I think that is so evident in the values of the community in terms of just the way that everybody interacts. I think that that's primary.
And similar to your point of what you've observed with your son, it's something that I observed when I first met my wife, who was an OGS student from kindergarten throughout. It is a quality in the young people here, and I see it in our high school students, where they're okay with themselves. They understand who they are. They're not holding themselves to some ideal of who, I mean, I can't speak to that in a blanket term, that's not, but the general sense I get of communicating with the young people that are here, they enter into relationship available, able to hear the person in front of them. And that's modeled for them, I think, by the teachers. And the teachers we're as a staff, we spend a lot of time doing inquiry work, getting in groups, digging into these questions so that we can realign, so that we can show up. We have to constantly question decisions we're making. Obviously, we need to make decisions as an administration, as staff, as faculty. And it's not, well, this is how we do it. We always got to do it that way. We go, what lens are we seeing this through? And it's a constant recalibration. It's a constant, it's a very dynamic thing that I think has to happen. But for those young people that, like your son, like my wife, that can enter into relationship with that, it's a very different experience, I think, that's able to receive what's coming in without having, I don't know that it's without conditioning, but it is at least seeing what's happening for them and is very available in a different way.
And I think to that point, my son, one of the things that he constantly talks about, and all the other kids do in his class that I sort of engage and share, he says, one of the ways that learning happens in this school is that even though there are teachers and they're there to teach us, the way they do it also is they model some of the things that they ask us to do. And we see that in their actions, and it's very profound. And he says, I think that's one of the ways that we're all learning at the school.
And it doesn't stop, just one, it's not one directional, it's back and forth. And I think that it's a gift for us. Like Dennis mentioned, taking a walk around campus, getting to see students in their joyous place of learning is a benefit for us as well. And it is this relationship that's going back and forth.
Yeah. And a question for me that comes up is, as a board member and a senior in class, they're like, are you going to continue to be on the board? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to continue to support the school because I love it so much. Thank you to the three of you for being here, and thank you
all.
Thanks.